Australia. How about a hand for our Octagon girls, Kahili and Luciana? Our general manager of UFC Australia is Tom Wright. Sean Shelby's in the building, folks, and our man Jess bringing up the rear. All right, we begin with the UFC Fight Pass prelims. First fight in the lightweight division. Alain Patrick versus Damian Beatdown Brown. First fighter to the scale, making his UFC debut, Damian Brown.
Damian Brown comes in taking this fight on a week's notice. He actually works in a prison in Australia where nobody's allowed to contact him except for, in cases of emergency, his wife. So his wife had to call him for the first time in his 3 years of working there to let him know, hey, honey, you're going to make your UFC debut right here in Australia. And oh, by the way, it's in just a couple days.
Brown. And his opponent, please welcome Alain Patrick.
Alain Patrick is fighting out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He's been training MMA since he was a boy, but that's not the only thing he was into as a kid. It was actually acrobatics. He said all the kids used to line up on his street in the neighborhood and see who could do the highest and the most flips. It's become a little bit of a signature for him here on weigh-in day.
$156 for Alain Patrick. All right, next up is our featured UFC Fight Pass prelim, also in the lightweight division. Ross, the real deal Pearson versus Chad, the disciple Laprise.
Chad Laprise was the first Canadian to win the Ultimate Fighter back 2 years ago when it was the Ultimate Fighter Nations, Canada versus Australia. He said he wanted to be on this card specifically because of that. It's a little bit of a reunion for him. Former competitor on the show, Brendan O'Reilly, even opened up his gym to Chad here in Brisbane so he could train there for the past week and a half.
156 for Chad Laprise. And his opponent making his 19th UFC appearance, Ross, the real deal Pearson.
Ross Pearson, an old training partner of mine, one of the most hard-working athletes that I've ever trained with. He's a gritty kickboxer, he likes to get in your face, and he's got a lot of power in his hands, so when he's in close range, you've got to take him seriously.
155 for Ross Pearson.
Welcome back to the desk. We are ready to weigh in the fighters on the 4-fight prelims, starting with welterweights Rich Walsh and Viscardi Andrade. The Jiu-Jitsu world champ Andrade is up first.
Rich Walsh versus Viscardi Andrade.
Viscardi Andrade overcame a broken tibia and fibula just a little bit over 2 years ago, made his comeback against Ghassan Umatov, and looked actually much better mentally prepared as a fighter. But how's he going to handle the fact that this is the first time he's ever competing out of his home country, Brazil, making the trip all the way to Australia?
$171.5 for Viscardi Andrade. And his opponent, filthy Rich Walsh.
Rich Walsh graduated with a degree in construction from the University of New South Wales. He did a stint studying abroad at Georgia Tech and then did some law school post-grad in 2012. All of that before realizing his dream of becoming a UFC fighter.
me. 170 for filthy Rich Walsh. And we are going to reweigh this Viscardi Andrade here. He was a half pound over. $171 for Viscardi Andrade. All right, moving on now to the bantamweight division. Leslie the Peacemaker Smith versus Rinne.
Rinne has a real cult following in Japan, but make no mistake, she is a serious grappler. She has a lot of finishes in the first round. She looks very timid on the feet, but as soon as she gets her hands on her opponent, she can drag them down to the floor and watch for the arm bars. She can throw them from any position.
$135 for Rinne. And her opponent, please welcome back Leslie Smith.
We have not seen Leslie Smith since November of 2014. She had her knee scoped, but she said she's been lobbying for a fight for nearly a year now. However, she did pick up some experience outside an evening nightclub where a man happened to grope one of her friends. She took him down and elbowed him into submission. So she has been practicing, folks.
$134 for Leslie Smith. All right, moving on now to the featherweight division. Dan the Hangman Hooker versus Mark Adiba.
Mark Adiba, he's relatively new to mixed martial arts, having a record of 6-2. However, he is a 2011 bronze medal winner in the World Wushu Sanda Championships. This man is a brilliant kickboxer, and he's taken on some tough opposition in the UFC already, in the likes of Kevin Souza and Levon Makashvili.
$145 for Mark Adiba. And his opponent is Dan Hooker.
Dan Hooker has been following Neil Magny's career since the Auckland card. He said he wants to emulate his style and his pace of fighting, so he sent him a message. Neil Magny responded, the next thing you know, Dan Hooker's on a flight to Denver. He's now a member of the Elevation Fight Team and even living at Magny's house.
$146 for the Hangman. And now we get to our featured prelim in the welterweight division. Brendan the Badger O'Reilly versus Alan Brahma Choban.
Alan Choban is a very dynamic southpaw kickboxer. He's got a lot of Muay Thai experience, and he's also an Eddie Bravo disciple, so expect him to tie his opponent up when it hits the mat. But if I know Alan, and I do know Alan, he will want to keep this fight on the feet. He's going to want to work his elbows, his close range striking, and he covers distance very quickly as well, so he can be on one side of the octagon and right in front of you in the next second.
Brendan OReilly.
Brendan OReilly has a lot of goals for his MMA career here in 2016, but another goal that stands out for him this year is buying a VW van and painting it just like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles van. We'll see if he can pull that one off after a win here in his hometown of Brisbane.
168 from Brendan OReilly.
Los Angeles. 12 more fighters are left to weigh in as we usher in the main card. Next up, it's strawweights. Rollins and Hommed. Dan, up first to the scale is the 9-year pro Hommed.
Really excited to see her fight. Kind of undersized for the weight class, but she makes up for it with grit. You know, she's such an aggressive fighter. She likes to stay in your face, and she's a Sanda champion as well. I studied Sanda in China myself, and it's a very interesting mix of trips and throws with striking, but it all depends on being very close to your opponent. So although she is slightly undersized, she's going to be in her opponent's face for the whole fight.
And showed just a tremendous amount of toughness in the UFC debut. I mean, this is a woman who comes to fight. You know, her fight in Korea and the UFC debut in Korea, she had a lot of pressure on it. I was really impressed.
$115 for Hommed. And her opponent is Rowdy Rollins.
Rollins has over 60 tattoos, including that new one she's sporting on the side of her head. She said her favorites, though, are the ones of her kid's name on the back of her neck. She said she always gets a victory tattoo. If she wins here in Brisbane, it will be a savage wolf on her foot. Lucky for her, her tattoo artist lives right here in Brisbane.
116 for
and Beck has been putting time in with our good friend Dominic Cruz down at Alliance, and he said that Beck is a very, very hard worker in the gym.
Yeah, fantastic gym down there. They do a really good job of taking people that are already good fighters in every individual sport and just blending it all together.
Pretty sharp hair color, too, on both of them.
I love good hair color.
Great stare down.
All right, next up in the light heavyweight division, James Tahuna versus Steve the Boss Bossy.
Steve Bossy is known for his tenure as an NHL enforcer, but it's fire that is his real passion. He's been chopping firewood since he was 8 years old with his dad, and in fact has taken over his father's firewood business now. When he's not fighting, training, or chopping firewood, he's actually putting out fires with his local fire department.
204 for Steve Bossy. And his opponent, folks, welcome back the Kiwi James Tahuna.
And James Tahuna actually reunited with his original coaches, Steve Ashby and Richard Sargent. He's been gym jumping quite a bit in his last few performances, kind of searching for answers, and what he's found is it reduced his focus. So he's gone back to home with his true trainers who brought him up in the sport. Really feels like now is his time, and he's got one more run left in him. And it's going to be interesting to see, does he decide to stand and trade with Bossy, or will he use all of his skill sets?
205. 205 for James Tahuna.
The owner of the greatest Men in Black walkout. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Yeah.
Really a high point in terms of walkouts.
He looks good coming back up to 205 now. He dropped down to 185 for a time being, but now we're seeing more people stay at their natural weight class. We'll see if it benefits Tahuna here.
All right, our next fight is in the middleweight division. Daniel Kelly versus Antonio Cara de Sapat Carlos Jr.
You know, when Antonio Carlos Jr. was on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, we saw knockouts out of him. You know, that was back when he was raw. He was basically a jiu-jitsu world champion, now fighting, who had massive power in his hands, but it was sloppy technique. Since then, he got the win over Vitor Miranda in the tough finale, had a humbling defeat to Patrick Cummins, but came back well against Eddie Gordon. The move to American Top Team has done him a lot of favors. Now, we haven't seen those knockouts manifest in the UFC, but a lot of times you see that when fighters are growing technically, it slows them down. This may be the fight where he puts it all together and looks like the contender we thought he would be in this weight class.
186 for Shoeface.
Well, and also, Brian, Shoeface won the Ultimate Fighter as a heavyweight. And now he's at 185 pounds. He was very big for the weight class. That may help him get that knockout power back.
But he's not got an easy opponent in front of him with Daniel Kelly. I mean, a four-time Olympian for Australia in judo. He's very, very durable, and he likes to constantly put the pressure on his opponent to make them break under that pressure. But the thing that I will point out about him is that he's not very good at range. He has to get close to his opponents to land his punches. He lands quite short-range shots. So this is going to be all about him getting as close to his opponent as possible, but staying out of that grappling range, being able to negate the grappling range with his jiu-jitsu, with his judo skills, keep this fight on the feet, but keep it in a close range so he can bully him.
186. 186 for Daniel Kelly.
Yeah, a four-time Olympian. That's pretty incredible.
It is really impressive.
And his highest finish, 7th place in 2004.
It'll be interesting because a lot of times people have that long of time spent in one sport. Their instinct is to use it. You know, will he not want to take Antonio Carlos Jr. down, or will he use his throws but then stay on his feet? I'm really anxious to see how this fight plays out.
It is a good one in the lightweight division. Jake Matthews versus Johnny Hollywood Case.
Now, Johnny Case was very honest in his pre-fight interview, saying that he's basically not that impressed with Matthews, believes that all of his skills are very generic. Now, it sounds arrogant and sounds cocky, but honestly, Johnny Case does a lot of visualization. He also does a lot of self-talk, where he tells himself how good he's going to perform and believes that it helps him mentally.
155 for Johnny Case.
Well, he is the favorite in this one at a minus 105, and Matthews minus 125. Oh, I'm actually sorry. My numbers are Matthews is a minus 125. I have Case as a 105.
Yeah, I've always been impressed with Jake Matthews. I called a couple of his fights, and you know, he's a very mobile fighter. He likes to stand quite high on his toes, which gives him good footwork and good ability to get out of the way of his opponents. You know, one of the youngest fighters in the UFC as well, so we can't discount the fact that he's still got a long way to go before he really matures into his fighting style. The thing that I like about him is that he's got his father in his corner. And that means that he's got a coach that's available 24 hours a day for him.
155 for Jake Matthews.
Yeah, really, I guess with these numbers, it's a pick-em fight. One thing that Matthews did say, too, though, he said that a lot of Americans kind of discount the talent in other parts of the world, so he really believes that he's got something special that maybe Johnny Case isn't ready for.
He's got an advantage in strength, and I want to see how he uses it in this case.
Event in the welterweight division, Hector Showweather Lombard versus Neil Magny. First fighter to the scale, making his 14th UFC appearance, Neil Magny.
Years ago, I called Neil Magny's fight against Sergio Moraes, where he was submitted quickly by a gorgeous triangle. And I remember wondering after that fight if Neil Magny was going to make it. Will he make it in the UFC, or will he wash out? And I probably doubted him at the time. Then last year, called his fight against Kelvin Gastelum, and the man has literally grown into a brilliant mixed martial art.
170 for Neil Magny.
Excellent use of his range, constantly evolving his style.
Plus, you military guys like to stick together, right?
He's not got an easy test, though. I mean, Hector Lombard, I still think that Hector Lombard can give anybody in the top 5 of this division a real tough test. He's such a physical specimen, and he's got ferocious power when he's in close. You know, the story that I hear about Hector Lombard that I always think is very interesting is that whenever he's training, even in the gym, he will not allow a takedown. Even if they're just drilling, he will absolutely refuse to be taken down. And just that stubbornness going into the fight is a real strong mindset, especially when you're fighting somebody that's going to keep a pace on you like Neil Magny and that can really keep you on the end of his jab. He's going to have to be tenacious, and he's going to have to be determined to get in close.
170. 170 for Hector Lombard.
It's like he's been chiseled out of concrete.
Yeah, I was just going to say action figure.
I trained him in the week, and I can attest to your not drilling pace. There is no drilling with Hector Lombard. It's all live.
the marquee, the two heavyweights who will share the octagon in tomorrow afternoon's main event. Take a look.
Oh, what the fans will see when they come to watch in Brisbane or watching on TV is a great fight. They'll see entertainment. They'll see me rise again. I want to fight with Mark Hunt because he's dangerous. He's well respected. A win over Mark Hunt, is going to propel me forward. It puts me one more step closer towards a title fight.
Frank Mir has been UFC world champion. He has fought for a long time inside the octagon. Frank Mir showed in the Todd Duffy fight that he still can get down with some of the youngest, toughest guys in the division and win by spectacular one-punch knockout.
I finish fights in almost every way you can finish a fight in the UFC. I can win through knockouts with my hands. I've put people to sleep with chokes. I've broken bones. I've submitted legs.
He's taking it! It's all over!
I feel right now that I am the most well-rounded heavyweight in the UFC.
For Mark Hunt, he's one of the best strikers in the UFC's heavyweight division, who has faced some of the best fighters in the world today. Oh, big right hand! The loss to Stipe Miocic was pretty devastating. He came back from that loss with a spectacular one-round knockout against Bigfoot Silva. One of his trainers for that fight said that he has never seen Mark Hunt more determined or more focused, and a Mark Hunt like that is a scary man.
Well, I reckon I can sub Frank, of course. I can sub Frank and anyone else on the planet. Mark pretty much wins by knockout, and he's very good at it. But it makes him a little one-dimensional. I just have more ways to win. My ground game obviously is extremely high level. I'm a different animal. How will I continue with Frank Mir's ground game? The same way I continue with all the ground fighters' ground game, is by punching them in the head. I really expect that the fight with Mark Hunt and I is going to be extremely exciting. I think it's going to be fireworks both ways.
First fighter to the scale, the former two-time UFC heavyweight champion, Frank Mir.
Frank Mir's team have been calling this the War of Legends, and that really communicates the kind of mindset they're trying to instill in Frank Mir. The only person holding Frank Mir back is Frank Mir himself. I've seen him go through really good training camps, and I've seen him hold back in training camps before, and the difference is always in his performance. When he's on point, when his weight's good, and when his conditioning's good, he has the confidence to push a pace on his opponent, and not many people can handle him.
And his
260 for Mr. Mir tonight.
9 in the world, the Super Samoan, Mark Hunt.
Mark Hunt actually recently published a book chronicling his life and all the adversities overcome. I mean, it's hard to remember. Back in 2010, when he made his UFC debut, he was submitted by Sean McCorkle in 63 seconds, and everybody doubted him. This guy is not going to last in the UFC. He's strictly a kickboxer. Fast forward to now, and he's fought for the UFC heavyweight title. Here now he's going to fight a former champion, has the opportunity to then get himself in position to fight for it again.
264.
Well, and also Dana had said he actually wanted to just buy out his contract. Didn't expect him to keep fighting, and Mark said, oh, heck no.
And with that, the main event is official, folks. Thank you all so much for coming out. Don't forget, we'll be right back out here.
The biggest rivalry in MMA is back on April 23rd. Here we go! As John Jones returns, dead set on reclaiming the title.
He is a monster!
From new light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier.
Are you kidding me? Oh!
Plus, the UFC's first and only flyweight champion Demetrius Johnson faces undefeated Henry Cejudo. It's a championship doubleheader at the MGM Grand, April 23rd. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
I can kind of get inside your head.
He takes this knife.
Hide it under anyone, under the cup.
Don't stop this fight. Don't stop this fight. Nick grabs the udder and squirts it all over his face.
Dad is trying to capture chickens.
He's trembling from here, I can see it.
After the first hour, I'm gonna vomit. So I think they'll just be like,
Now that I'm looking Tazen in the face, I'm sweating. 3, 2, 1.
I'm the #1 most dangerous heavyweight on the planet because I'm on a mission and I will not be stopped.
Jaws dropped throughout this arena.
It's what we said about Junior's power. It can change things instantly.
Oh, this one's gonna end. Ben Rockwell has done
You have seen nothing yet.
The UFC Octagon smashes into the Netherlands for the first time May 8th. Homegrown heavyweight Alistair Overeem headlines this groundbreaking event, taking on fellow legend, teammate, and European striker Andre Arlovski. With 56 fight finishes between the two, this main event is sure to rock Rotterdam and fans around the globe. UFC Fight Night Rotterdam, Overeem versus Arlovski, May 8th.
What's your problem? Bored? Stop whining and watch a fight. Not just a fight, pretty much every MMA fight worth watching. How? UFC Fight Pass, that's how. It's a digital streaming service with the world's largest fight library, original shows, and exclusive live events. That's thousands of fights being through your eyeballs and into your brain. Anywhere, anytime. Problem solved. UFC Fight Pass solves everything.